Okay, great. So we got things started. Today we've got another panel discussion. So last week, if you were on or if you watched the recording, we had a panel discussion on how to talk about tech to people within your organizations and other organizations that you interact with. Today, this panel discussion is about how to talk about tech to individuals and families and caregivers. How do you introduce this concept to them? And I'm excited because we have two guest speakers for today's panel discussion. I'd like to introduce them both now. You'll recognize Kathy Mishheim Larson from last week's panel discussion. Kathy, you still get an introduction this week, even though it's a return appearance. So Kathy's the Director of Remote Supports and Assistive Technology at Sevita and REM, Minnesota. And she spearheads the implementation of remote support across Minnesota. So she currently sits on the board of Minnesota Networking and Education of Assistive Tech, which is also known as MNMET, the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, the Minnesota Stroke Association, and the ARRM Technology Resource Committee. So we welcome Kathy once again, backed by popular demand. And then also joining us from Pennsylvania, where I'm from, or where I'm living, we have Nathan Gerhard. Nathan is currently the Associate Executive Director of Intellectual Disability Services for Keystone Human Services in both in North Central and Northeast Pennsylvania. So Nathan's been in the field of intellectual disabilities for over 20 years. Beginning in 2018, he began to lead the effort to bring technology into service delivery and has been part of making Keystone a technology first provider. And the great sort of backstory, they started with one individual in one home in 2018, and they now use technology to support over 250 individuals across 140 locations in 3 states. So those of you who are trying to imagine how we get from 0 to 60 quickly, or 0 to 250 in this case, he's a great person to add insight. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. And so my first question to both of you is really to tell us about the role that you have and what's your history of working with individuals and families and caregivers. And we can start with Nathan.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. So my current role is, as Paul said, Associate Executive Director for Keystone. So I oversee the northern part of Pennsylvania with my role, and I have peers that oversee the other parts of Pennsylvania. So I started working with families way back in the 1900s. So it's been quite a while that I've been involved in this type of work. Really started as a residential aide in a residential school for children with multiple disabilities. So been working with families, been a staff person, and all the way up to my current role in administration. So lots of experience working with the folks that you're going to be talking to as you move forward with this project.
Great. And Kathy, want to tell a little bit about your background in working with families?
Sure. So right now my role is Remote Supports and Assistive Technology Director. But back when I started out, and I should probably say the 90s as well, Nathan. Back when I started out, I did internal case management for a post-acute brain injury rehab program. So my background is in rehabilitation and technology as far as assistive technology for individuals who had a brain injury or a stroke. Moved up to Minnesota, where I took on the role of brain injury director. And then because of my close work with OTs and PTs and AT, moved into doing technology. So we started doing technology in Minnesota back in 2014. Legislatively, we were allowed to use technology supports for individuals. And we had more of a growth probably in the last 4 or 5 years where we've seen a significant increase in the amount of people that we're serving using some type of remote supports or assistive technology. So, and I said this in our last presentation, you may have heard me say it then, but our terminology state to state is very different. Every state seems to have a different definition for remote supports, enabling technology, assistive technology, all that. So, but you should be able to catch on as we're talking or just ask and clarify. I just did a presentation yesterday where we were talking about that same issue, that state to state, it's all different. Part of that is legislative. Our legislation has it defined in a certain way. So that's the language we speak. So I'm sure other states are the same as well. But thank you.
So is your, whether you're evaluating individuals in your care for technology or you see a success story in your program and you think of 2 or 3 other individuals who could possibly benefit from that, there's obviously some barriers sometimes in terms of acceptance by the family or the caregiver. How do you start that outreach? What are some effective ways to just make that initial discussion happen and try to swing the pendulum toward your view?
So I can start, or Kathy, if you want to go.
Go right ahead, Nathan. Go right ahead.
All right. So one of the things that we learned after the one person in the one home is don't make it about the technology. Make it about the outcome. Make it about the goals of the person, what they want to do and where they want to go. And then incorporate technology into that discussion. So when we started, we had a very clear idea of how we were going to use technology, and we successfully did that. And it was a challenge initially, because we went through all the concerns of not only the individual, not so much she was on board with it, but her mom was not. So that was a challenge. But the other challenge that we ran into was staff, thinking that they were going to be out of a job because of this. And in every presentation I do, when I show different graphs, I always preface it by saying no direct support professionals were harmed in the implementation of this technology, nor did any of them lose their jobs. And so the message is a little different depending on who you're talking to, but it always, in my opinion, always should start with what does the person want? What are their goals? What are their dreams? And then incorporating the discussion of how technology can assist with that into it, not starting off with, we think you're the right person to do that, to use this technology, because we found that it puts up more barriers than it actually, than were there in the first place. So.
Great advice. Kathy, what are some of your initial suggestions?
Well, the first thing I look at is who's going to be doing that communication. So, I mean, communication, especially with families, is a skill set. And they really need to have the background and the knowledge to be able to speak to technology and to answer those common questions that are going to come up at first. Fortunately, we have some natural ways to introduce technology because we are legislatively required to have a conversation about technology at every annual meeting and every 45-day meeting. So there's kind of a natural opening to discuss it. And if there's any way the state can create that as something that's required, it just makes it so much easier to have that conversation. But the person who has that conversation really does have to have the skill sets to be able to answer questions, communicate with families, go back and forth in their emotions regarding the technology and the conversation. The other thing I really make sure is that we know the audience, like who are we talking to? What does this family and person already know about technology? Are they for it? Are they not for tech? I mean, you know that if you've been working closely with those families, who's techie and who's not techie, and what are the person's life goals? What are they striving for? And just those things in general, knowing the person really well to be able to speak to those issues as you're having that particular discussion. So those are my suggestions to start.
And if I can add to that, Kathy, along with who is doing the presentation and how it's being presented, one of the things that we incorporated was the discussion into the person-centered planning process. So Pennsylvania uses life course frameworks as the recommended way to do a person-centered plan for someone. So we took that because they give you a set of questions and suggestions and examples. We actually added a parallel set of points to those documents that they gave us relating to technology. So, if a person says they want a job, well, do they have a means to, do they have a resume? Do they have a means to search a job site? And just those little questions, when you start to incorporate them in, and again, it's who's doing it. So we trained our staff, who are the people who facilitate those meetings, to incorporate those types of things into the discussion. So that was really on the same page with what we're doing.
Oh, Paul, I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. So one thing that jumped out, Kathy, in what you said is that it's a skill set, and I want to just kind of poke that a little bit more. So do you find that you identify particular individuals to do these conversations, or is it something you would train up staff to do? And what are 2 or 3 of the skills that are really special?
Yeah, both actually. So we will identify key individuals to have that conversation. And the build-up part, or the training part, is really about being able to speak to general common concerns, common questions that come up in the beginning. I try not to delve too much into it. We would want to focus mainly on what the goal of the individual is, what they're wanting, what the family's wanting, and what the capability and possibility is. Because sometimes they may not be aware that they would want this, because they're not aware that that's even a possibility, or what's out there, what's available to them, especially for the individuals. I mean, they may or may not be aware enough to be able to say, I'd like to be more on my own, at certain times of the day. So training up the staff on those common questions. And we actually have a document that I can send you. It's available. It's just remote supports talking points. It's common questions that family has, like, who's doing the monitoring? How do we know they are monitoring? Or what happens if the vendor's technology goes out and is not monitoring? And just all those general questions that might come out. So this was put out by our provider organization many years ago. And it's one of the tools that we'll use and train on in order to help them understand it. But also teaching them that how to flex. And when I say flex, I mean, when I've had families that initially we have any conversation about tech, they're like, oh, heck no, I'm not doing that. This is not for my loved one. Forget that. I don't want don't even talk to me about it. And I will just say, yes, absolutely. We won't bring it up, but would you maybe consider just listening in on an education session about it, or listening to this tech company talk about it? You don't have to commit to anything, but would you be interested in listening? And I've never had anybody turn me down on just listening. So, and there are some situations where we're talking tech with a family, and they've said no, and 2 years later, they're on board. So it may take a while. It takes some education. But after a while, we've been able to kind of help them learn and be able to then make those decisions.
So you brought up several of the objections that can come up, and sometimes it's just a firm no as soon as the word technology comes up, or the suggestion that a caregiver won't be there side by side with the individual all the time. What are some of the main objections that you face? And Kathy might have just mentioned a few of them. And how do you break them down? How do you begin to put the family at ease with what you're suggesting?
Nathan, do you want to go first?
Sure. So when we started this at Keystone in 2018, it wasn't a thing in Pennsylvania. So there's no legislation. It wasn't part of the waiver. It was something that we had decided we were going to do. So we were starting from scratch. And when we did that, we went through every what if scenario. I mean, I have pages and pages of what if, that we internally came up with, found an answer to, or how we would handle it. And so that prepared us for when we were having those conversations with an individual or with a family to say, well, here's how this is what a backup plan looks like. Is yes, we rely on technology, but if there's a blip, if the power goes out, here is what the response is, or what it will be. And if a sensor says this, then this is what we're going to do. And part of that is, again, we integrate it into the conversation of something that the person says that they want to do. And when we get to that point, if we're working with another vendor to provide the technology, the discussion with the person is, what do you want out of it? Or what are your concerns? Or what is something that you're worried about if you do this? And let's find an answer to that. Or let's tell you how that is. If sometimes it's apparent what the answer will be. Other times we have to create what the answer will be. So getting those concerns brought out and working through them and having the discussion through them, whether it be from historical knowledge of what you're going to do, or saying, okay, we didn't think about that. We're going to figure that out before we do anything, before we put anything in. We're going to find the answer to this first.
Excellent. Kathy?
Usually I find the main objections come from a fear base. So, it's directly about fears or perceived vulnerabilities and those what ifs like Nathan was talking about. So people are a lot of times afraid of what they don't know or what they haven't seen. Just if you're technology in itself. I've heard one mom tell me, I'm just too old to learn about this stuff. And, just family and individuals' fears about safety. I mean, they're really mainly concerned about safety and security. So, getting to the what ifs and getting to answer those questions about if this happens, what will occur, they're able to understand better the efficiency of technology. And so I've seen situations where we could do a demonstration of how fast the technology can alert somebody that something is going on, and that's convinced them or had them at least feel a little more comfortable at looking at this option. So, but that's the main thing that we're having to work through oftentimes, is that limited vision of what's possible in the future, and what's coming down the road. I have had a lot of families that understand the staffing crisis. They've seen their loved one hit by that staffing crisis. And so when they start to learn how technology will alleviate some of that pressure and allow their loved one to be actually safer, they've been much more willing to consider technology. We also come in with a lot of data. So if I know we're going to want to use technology for overnight supervision, we're doing a remote support setup or something like that, we will come in with the actual data of what's occurring on the overnight. What kind of things do we have to actually respond to? And in some instances, it's been 3 months of data. Some instances it's longer, but really showing what exactly is occurring. And we had one case where the only thing that ever happened on the overnight was one individual in the early morning, like 7 a.m., needed his urinal emptied. And that's something we can account for. We can bring staff in early in the morning to make sure that's taken care of. Or had a sock that was falling off and needed an adjustment. Those were the types of things we were responding to. These were not big, larger things that we were having to respond to. So having that data was very helpful. And then a lot of times I talk to the families about, if a staff was there, what would the staff do? So they'll bring up something like, well, we can't not have a staff person there because, John has seizures in the middle of the night, or he could potentially get up and walk out the door. And so we talk about, well, if a staff was there, how would they know that John walked out the front door? And a lot of times they don't. If it's a sleep staff, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know that a seizure occurred. Even if they were doing every hour checks or every other hour checks, they're not going to necessarily know what's going on in regards to a seizure in that room unless they happened upon it at that time. With technology, we actually know faster and quicker what's going on and can respond to that in a much more efficient way. So it really talking about the facts of what's going on in the middle of the night has helped us move people through the process of understanding tech and considering the use of tech.
Excellent. Thank you. So as you know, the folks on this call right, the state itself is really ramping up a enabling technology pilot. Folks on this call, many of them are in the process of being credentialed by Shift, learning how to talk with individuals and perhaps assessing their needs around technology. And then we have the speaker series, which is telling everybody all these great solutions that are practical and are actually happening. So we've got a lot of information that's flooding folks, right, which is great. So to get to my question, when I was in my experience in Pennsylvania, I got all of these big ideas and I started talking to individuals, and I might have walked away and thought, wow, we can do all of these different things with this. And my question is, have your experience been that like sort of a big bang approach with the individual? Let's put in a smart speaker. Let's do some environmental controls. Let's do seizure monitors. Or a slow roll has been more effective, or is it a little bit of both?
I think for my experience, it's a little bit of both, and it really depends on the person, right? So our first person, we had a rollout plan of how we were going to pull staff out for the overnights, and to make it so that it was over a couple week period, so that she could be comfortable with the technology and with not having a staff there. That about 4 days when she told the staff saying, "I'm good, see you later." And then move even forward to today. I mean, she was seeing, one staff 24/7, and now she's gets 80 hours a week where there's a staff person at her house. So less than half, or more than half are of the direct support. And she did that very quickly, over like a week or two later, she's like, tell the staff not to come in tell the staff I want them to leave at 9 instead of 11, because I just want a little bit of me time before I go to bed. And then after that, it was, I don't want the staff coming in till 9 because I don't want to talk to anybody until I've had my coffee. And so she really directed how it happened. The second house we did, it was quite the opposite. There was a couple of folks who were very nervous about it, and they had an extended implementation period, if you will, that spanned over 3 months before we got to the same place where she got to in 4 days. And that's okay. So I would say that individualized is the most important way to look at this, but also choose carefully who you're going to start this with. Go for who's going to be able to become your champion. Look for that person who you're pretty sure almost 100% that it's going to work. Because what happened for us with that first person, she became the spokesperson. She's hosting other individuals to come to her house and see what the technology looks like. She was hosting other folks from within Keystone early on, folks from other agencies in Pennsylvania. We had folks from out of state coming to her house because she wanted to show them the technology that she was using. She presented at a conference, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to talk about what this did for her. So choose carefully and keep it individual. We have a blueprint that we made from what we did with her as the first, and say, okay, this is kind of how we're going to replicate this moving forward. But know that that's going to be different for every person. And as long as you stay focused on what the person is saying that they want and how they want to proceed, it's going so much of a greater chance of success of it sticking.
Thanks, Nathan. Kathy, do you have anything to add related to slow roll versus more?
So when it came to starting technology in any of the homes, it was the hardest part was getting our staff to buy in as an option. And so, and this was before COVID. So before COVID, there was not as much people were not as comfortable with technology and using it. Even, a webinar like this was rare. And so we started slow by just bringing in pieces of tech and starting to use them in small ways. Might be a med dispenser. It might be an Alexa device to open a window or to open the shades. So we started small in that way. But then when it comes to individuals, and if we are doing remote supports and we've all set up to move forward, I have the same experience that Nathan has in that it's really individual to how comfortable they feel. And we use several different tech companies to provide our remote support. So each one doing it a little bit different in how they will interact and communicate with our individuals and develop relationships with them. So a lot of the live communication that occurs between the vendor and our individuals, they've developed relationships and get comfortable with them before we pull or have staff kind of back out. So again, it could be 3 months of us doing tech support and a staff person in the environment. Then we wean them out by having them maybe leave for a few hours in the middle of the night and slowly move that process along. It's very individualized. I have some people that are like the next day, as soon as the tech's there, they're like, okay, get out. You know? So, and in fact, some environments where we put tech in, we're doing it because the individuals do not want a staff in their house. They have behavioral upsets because of it. They get mad and angry when staff are around. In fact, they kick them out into the hallways sometimes. So putting tech has made a lot of sense in those environments, and they are ready to start the minute the tech is installed. So yeah, one by one, you figure it out.
Excellent. So Nathan, you started down the road on this next question with your at the end of your last response. And I wanted to kind of loop back to it. So you mentioned that you identified a champion, or either your first or your second person sort of became a champion and really sounds like a great advocate for others. What kind of character, how'd you tease out those characteristics? Was it something you actually identified, or did it just sort of by happenstance seem to become the right person? Is there a way to find those individuals?
That's tough because so for our first, we chose a person who on paper looked like this shouldn't work. But the environment that they lived in worked, right? They were very close to it. She lived in a one-person home that was adjacent to a two-person home. Her staff was sleeping overnight. The next home was awake overnight. So it was the perfect environment to start it. She herself, in Pennsylvania, folks are categorized by a needs level, and then that needs level equates to a needs group, and that needs group equates to what you get paid for that person. So she, at that time, was the absolute highest needs group. Significant clinical concerns, had almost like a safe room for staff that she would send staff to when she was upset with them. So if we're just looking at that, it would be hard to say that she was the perfect person to be our champion. Nothing in her history would have told us that this was what was going to happen. But we looked at an environment that we thought it could be successful, and she was open to it because of the fact that she butted heads with staff so much. But moving forward through that, we really looked at what is the person telling us, and then we choose from there. So you know what I mean? If the person's saying, I think I'm ready to live on my own, but I don't know. I've always lived in an environment where somebody's doing the cooking, somebody's doing the cleaning, somebody's taking me to my medical appointments, and so there's that fear factor. So we choose those homes to maybe integrate technology into, so they can start to become more independent and do things for themselves without having a staff person have to do it for them. And then they become the next person who's ready to move out. We've seen that happen over and over again with folks where we may look at something to assist them with a goal of cooking, to be able to cook independently. And then that, goes from there into something we weren't even expecting. We did it so that they could be more independent and self-sufficient with cooking and do that safely. And now they're ready to move out on their own because they've gained that confidence that they're doing more than they thought they were able to do. So no, I don't. All that to say, no, I don't know that there is a perfect person. You have to look at the scenario. You have to look at what they're telling you, what their goals are, and is there a way you can think of how do we even if it's just to get a person a smartphone or a smartwatch so they can track their steps because they say, I want to be more healthy or I want to lose, 10 pounds. There's a better way than saying, okay, let's put in a goal that staff are going to prompt you to go for a 20-minute walk every day. My watch tells me at 10 o'clock at night that, hey, there's still time. You can go for a brisk 29-minute walk and close your exercise ring. So, all these things that you don't have to have, that traditional thinking is a staff has to do it and document on it. But there are ways that you can do that and introduce things that don't rely on a staff person.
Kathy, your thoughts on that?
Well, as regards a champion, I more have seen the need for champions with staff, and getting the right staff champion, and that comes through experience of having gone through it, seen it in action. And some of that comes natural. There are some people that we all meet, staff that are rambunctious and excited and want to try new things and see possibilities. And there's others who have, maybe not been exposed in the past and are not as excited. They have more of that fear base themselves. So finding those champions and nurturing them in their communication has been helpful to be able to get those people on board. Really, I always go back to, it's about the knowledge and education about what tech is and how it works, because we are afraid of what we don't know, and we will hesitate, and that comes across to the families and the individuals. So the other thing, I think I mentioned this last time, those champions have been helpful in working with staff when the staff themselves are worried about what's going to happen. I like, Nathan, what you said in the beginning about how you get your staff to feel about technology coming in. That's a great way to get them on board, that you're not going to lose your job, because that is what they're worried about. But also in some cases I've had them worried, and I think I talked about this last week, worried about them losing their 60 hours of overtime. So, that has to happen. That's just hard on a company. So those champions, it really comes down to the staff for us. Individuals that are champions, I find that most of our individuals are very private about that. I think that's personality as well. Personality, who likes to be out there and speaking, and who finds joy from that. And then those who are just quietly wanting to do their own thing. So yeah, we don't have many individual champions. So Nathan, that's great that you've got one really strong one, it sounds like. Speaking at conferences, that's wonderful.
And we have about 5 minutes to go in the panel discussion, and then we're going to get a great presentation from Nomo Smart Care. So both Jess and Sean are going to get ramped up for that presentation. And then right at the end, we're going to have Patrick from Shift, who has some stuff about training. So we've got a couple things coming up. Kind of a wrap-up question. One of you referenced it a little bit in a previous answer, but the concept of getting quick wins, quick isn't the right term, but like sort of easy wins early on. And what does that do for you? What does that do for your organization or your staff to be able to find successes early on in your program? Kathy, why don't you go ahead if you've got something on that.
Yeah, well, we did talk about this, looking for where the strongest opportunities are. We've got people pretty much all on board where you can move forward. I think it just demonstrates what it is that you're able to provide, and people get more comfortable with using the technology and seeing how efficient it can be. And so I think that helps everybody gain confidence in moving forward on this project and seeing the future. So that's what it has done for the company. I think those I don't know, hate to call it low-lying fruit, or the ones where you just see everything's all lining up and going to work really well. That just gives you that confidence to move forward into the more harder and more challenging setups. And there are a lot of those. We're doing one right now that has a boundary care device as well as a Dexcom G7 in place. So you were monitoring some pretty significant medical issues, but not going to have staff there at all. So that's a little more complicated situation, and it's going to take time to get set up. But we didn't start with those types of situations. We started with ones that were just maybe a basic sensor on the front door and a two-way audio video device. So those were the ones that were helped us get our feet wet and to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and I would, our story is very similar. You know, it's because there wasn't a model in Pennsylvania for us to follow at the time. We were creating the model that later changed our regulations. So a lot of the stuff that we did ended up in the new regulations that came out. So, you know, for us, it was, we wanted it to work, but we also needed it to work because when we would ask, you know, our licensing officials or our policy officials, they're all just like, nope, just be safe and tell us what you did. So there was a lot of pressure to have it be successful. And so from that end, but then also we needed it to be able to show that we're on the right path with this. And this is the way that, you know, more modern service delivery looks like. It's not one-on-one or 1 to 3. It's the person gets just the right level of support. You know, moving from just in time or just in case staffing to just in time staffing, you know, that we're staffing the outcomes of a person, not a model that the person resides within. So we were able to accomplish a lot of those pieces with those early wins that gave us the framework of how to move forward. And we were very slow. Pandemic didn't help us except for the fact that everybody had an Alexa in their house by the time the pandemic was over. But you know, we really took off in 2021. That's where our chart, you know, goes way up with folks jumping on. It's because they've had that. We've integrated it in some way. We had these success stories, and now they're long-term success stories. You know, it's several years that a person has been supported this way, and we've shown that it works, and it works for them. I mean, the same young woman who I referenced as our first person at the highest needs level that you can be in Pennsylvania is now the lowest needs level that you can be in Pennsylvania because all the clinical pieces aren't there anymore. You know, who would have thought that staff were causing the behaviors? I don't know. But yes, that's really what it turned, you know, being facetious, but that's what it was. She didn't want someone with her 24/7. And when that person's not there, you know, she really gained more independence, and we saw a lot of progress in a lot of parts of her life.
That's fantastic. Thank you both for sharing that information. Thank you for your participation in this panel discussion. It's been really informative, enlightening. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences. Kathy, just to note, there is I'll send this to you, but Devona did ask a question specifically to you in the chat, and I'll make sure you get that and we get her response back to everybody on that. Okay, so before I hand it over to the folks at Nomo Smart Care, just real quick, let you know what's coming up. So we're going to give Kathy and Nathan a week off, so a break from panel discussions. Next week, Kyle Ballman from Millar Rich is going to join us to talk about environmental controls and how to make anything smart. And then coming up on August 8th, we have Elena Gallagher, one of our students, and Jason Ray, and they're going to talk about medication management, so solutions around those areas. So make sure you tune back in. And once again, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Nathan. And now I'm going to bring in both Jess Smith and Sean Johnson from Nomo Smart Care, and they're going to do the vendor spotlight presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Jess, the floor is yours.
Hey, Paul. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
Absolutely.
Oh, great. Thank you. Awesome. I don't know what it is about Google Meet, but if there's a person that needs adaptive tech in Google Meet, it's me. So I'm glad we crossed that. Hey, we're going to get right into it because we know we don't have a lot of time. But I first want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to sit in on this, particularly Kathy and Nathan. Just one of the toughest challenges in our space is just getting people to appreciate the value that solutions and services like ours can deliver into the home. And it's one of the hardest conversations to have, whether it be with my parents or supporting somebody else. So I took a lot of notes, and I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. Let me go ahead and pull up my screen. So Paul, be my canary in the mine for me and just make sure that I am sharing the right thing. You should see the first slide of the presentation.
Yep, we got it.
Right on. Okay, so let me get into this quick and let's see if we can do this. So thank you for the opportunity. So my name's Jess, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to the Nomo Smart Care product as well as the team. With me, of course, is Sean Johnson. Sean's in the yellow room. He's an intern with us, one of a couple on the sales and marketing side, and so he'll be sharing a presentation with me today. Also in the room with me is Tim Chernow, and I'll just spin this quick and say, hey, Tim. Tim's our Chief Marketing Officer and our big communicator. So if there was really somebody writing down a lot of what Nathan and Kathy was talking about, it was him. Hey, our goal is to learn from this experience and find ways to deliver value to everybody on this call and everybody that you touch. We're not here to compete. We're simply here to help because we're caregivers too. Let me advance. Oh, there we go. A little delay. Sorry, let me switch this. Here we go. All right. So very quickly, Novo is a novel tool developed for personal caregivers. Simple tech in the home picks up on ambient data spun off by mom as she goes out, she goes through her day, in and out of the bed, in and out of the bathroom, the kitchen, even in and out of the home. We call this normal motion. Nomo monitors normal motion in the home and alerts caregivers when routines have changed. We can tell you when the unexpected happens, such as an external door opening in the middle of the night or the press of a help button or a potential fall. But Nomo can also tell you when the expected doesn't happen. Maybe mom hasn't gotten up normally this morning, or she hasn't been in the med cabinet or in the fridge for a couple hours. Nomo can do all this without cameras, constantly listening, overexposing PHI to the clouds. And probably one of the biggest points is you can get all this without the need of a wearable if one's not desired. I'm slow to advance, so I apologize. There we go. So the Nomo app itself is a powerful and engaging tool that allows as many caregivers into the care circle. Each caregiver can set triggers and notifications so they get the info they need when and how they need it. For me, I like seeing all the data coming out of my parents' home. For my brother, he just wants to know when the issues are red and when it's time to kick the door down in the home. Let's see, I lost my thing. Sorry. There it is. In the event of an alert, Nomo gives the caregivers immediately an opportunity to connect with mom. You can immediately call to the app. You can call to the hub from the app, and it doesn't require any engagement from mom. A little audio cue just simply says that an inbound call is coming, and then immediately you're in the room with mom. And if the issue is urgent, caregivers can escalate to a 24/7 professional monitoring service that can support, assess, and even dispatch in your absence if needed. So probably the better question here is, who is Nomo not for? And when you think about the communities you serve, you know each individual, each need is individual and their needs are unique. And a simple device, as easy as it is, can't serve all. So we built Nomo to adapt as needs adapt. It says individual is a fingerprint. You know what needs monitoring as a provider, you decide how to do it. Maybe it's a tag on the fridge initially to just check on mom as she's in and out of the fridge. But maybe over time, you need a little bit more granularity to what's actually happening in the kitchen relative to that activity of daily living. Is mom actually getting into the pantry? Is she getting out the spices? Is she using the oven? Is she cooking? Or is she just coming in and grabbing a snack? Some of the monitoring opportunities we can provide, certainly starter end of the day, sleep disturbances, users' ability to transfer throughout the home or their general mobility, meal prep, meds, even vitals. Nomo can never promise that somebody completed an ADL. We can't tell you that they ate the sandwich or that they took the med. But what Nomo does is it tracks those normal routines that you associate with those behaviors. And when you see those go awry, then you have an opportunity to check in. And quite honestly, check in at maybe a more appropriate time than later when something becomes a bigger issue. There's a lot that sets Nomo apart from other systems in the market. For today, we'll just share feedback from providers like you on some of the salient features that make us unique. Multiple waiver populations. We're seeing in a variety of states where we can bring value to the provider across different populations, just simply because the ability to give you the info you need on whoever you want to monitor. Plug and play, super easy to install, and we'll share that data with you in a second. Adapts to evolving needs in the home. You can set Nomo up to meet your monitoring needs now, but as mom's behavior changes or as her needs change, you can move Nomo around and reset your triggers so it can adapt to the situation. You can get information and you can know when something's going awry. You can even detect when somebody's possibly had a seizure or a fall without a wearable. And one of the ways you can do that is just by simply setting an alert that says that if there's been no activity seen in the home during an expected time for a duration or whatever you consider, Nomo simply just sends you a little text that lets you know that that's occurred. Our products are compatible with third-party devices. I heard glucose monitors and I heard other devices. Right now we have blood pressure monitors, we have thermometers, we have weight scales, and we have a Walmart blood glucose monitor paired to it. What's cool about this is that, my mom uses multiple brands and it goes into her phone and I don't even know where her phone is. So what Nomo can do is bring that data into the app and trend it for you so you can quickly get a sense if the day's normal or not. And probably the last feature to call out is that Nomo's available for less than $1 a day in the first 12 months of service. That's a $250 MSRP on the shelf and only $9.99 a month to support everything that we just talked about. One of the things we're super proud of is our relationship with Walmart. As I said, our footprint's expanded to other retailers, but one of the things that we did immediately with Walmart is engage with them in an observational study that lasted about 3 months. The whole goal was to, gauge Nomo's impact on peace of mind, assess its ability to protect privacy, and just generally make caregiving easier. And some of the results were overwhelming. We're happy to share this, so I'm just pulling off a couple of high points. But as the head of insights at Walmart said, this product tested better than most in either wellness or consumer electronics. So some of the findings that we saw very quickly: nobody required professional installation. Nearly all had it set up within 30 minutes or less. And most felt, more than 8 out of 10 felt that the balance of privacy was just about right. As well, we surveyed both the caregiver and the care recipient through the process, and very happy to say that the majority of both said that Nomo not just delivered peace of mind, but we saw those scores grow month over month over month of the trial. And the final one, which I believe is probably the testament to the experience, is the willingness to whip out your wallet and pay for the service after trial. The survey suggested about 3 out of 4, about 75%, will remain on service after the trial. And we're seeing about that. About 7 out of 10 in our data shows that most are sticking around. So again, Nomo's available on the market for $250 today. $9.99 a month brings a ton of value and a ton of resources and a ton of features available to you that might cost more in other ways. We have a multitude of offerings across accessories, both multiple satellites, multiple tags, so you can adapt your system over time. And in time, we're also going to have not just a broader line of compatible devices, but maybe our own as we work with you and your communities. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to hold questions for the end, but what I want to do is stop sharing and give Sean an opportunity to just talk a little bit about Nomo and then show off the product. Hey, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. So what I have laid out in front of me right here is the Essential Care Kit itself. So before I get explaining the product, I really want to bring home what Jess said about how adaptive we are to rapidly changing needs, right? Our system is so easy to set up. Just because you set us up in the living room doesn't mean you're fixated there forever. You can easily unplug the hub, unplug a satellite, move a tag around, and really just adapt to the needs that you need to. So with that being said, let's get to the hub. The hub is what you put in the main room of your care recipient, and that's for 3 reasons. The first reason is the 2-way communication capability. So any time of day, you can directly call into the hub through the app and start talking one-on-one with whoever you're caring for. The hub will announce how calls inbound so that they're aware of it, and it gives them that sense of privacy. Next is the ability to give pokes. So pokes are little audio reminder that you can set at any time interval. So if at 9 a.m. you want to have a poke set that just says, hey, don't forget to take your medication this morning. I'll stop in around noon to check in on you. You can have that set for days, weeks, months. You can have it for as long as you like. It's very customizable. And lastly is the help button feature. So on top of the hub, there's this little darker gray square, and that's the help button. So anytime the care recipient hits that button, it goes out to the limited care circle, and everyone is aware that a help button was pressed. Moving on to the satellites. So the satellites are range extenders. They help extend the Wi-Fi connectivity throughout the home, but they also detect motion and can tell you when someone's coming in and out of a room. They easily plug into an outlet on the wall. We see that great places for these are bottom of stairwells and hallways in between the bedroom and bathroom. So if whoever you're caring for is getting up a lot at night and using the restroom, you can plug in a satellite into the wall, and it'll even put out a little night light that helps give some visibility and really mitigates that fall risk. Lastly are the tags. Now, the tags are what really makes no-mo, right? These things are so versatile. Personally, in my home, I have a tag on the medicine cabinet. I have a tag on the fridge. I have a tag on the garage door. And with that, I can find out when my father is opening the medicine cabinet, when he's opening the fridge, when he's leaving the home and opening up the garage. But I can also be aware of when those things are not happening. So if the medicine cabinet isn't open before noon, I can find out. If the fridges are being touched all day, I'll know, and I can call in and just check in on them, find out what's wrong. And you can also pair them as a pendant. So when it's a pendant, you get fall, you can get fall detection. So with that though, we understand that not everyone wants to wear a wearable. And that's why we have the ability to be notified when nothing's happening, because after a fall, as we all know, nothing really happens, right? So being able to program your NOMO system to let you know when there's no movement, there's no motion, things aren't being done, you get that extra safety net below you, and you can check in and just get that extra peace of mind. So I know I flew through that, but that's NOMO in a time crunch. You're muted there, Jess.
Look at the intern doing better than me. Sean, how many weeks are you in on our intern program this year?
I think this is week 8, week 7.
Well done. You've picked up on this well. You did a better job than me, so congrats. Hey, I want to bring in Tim real quick. So Tim, you're looking at your app right now. I know we don't have a lot of time, so maybe just give a little sense of what you see with your mom.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to us today. I'm just going to give you a quick update. My mom is 95 years old. She lives alone. Both my brothers live near her. We all use NOMO. My mother is awake. And she just went downstairs and she just opened up the front door where she gets her beloved newspaper and the cupboard where she keeps her teacup. So I know that my mom's day is looking pretty much normal. This is about the time she starts her day. She enjoys a leisurely start. And if it's not normal, if none of those events have been activated, then I'll get a message telling me she's moving a little bit slowly this morning. And I can either call her through the hub or check in with my brothers and say, what do we do now? Let's call her and keep her on tap. I call it tap management. We tap our mother along, make sure that everything is going normal. Any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes for questions if anybody on the call wants to ask.
You mentioned that it notifies you if the cupboard's not opened or if she hasn't gone downstairs yet. Is that something that's set up like time-wise? Or does it kind of set up a routine and start to learn that individual's routine on its own?
Right now, the way we look at it is you set it up for yourself. You know what the routine should look like, so you can set it up to indicate if something that unexpected that you expect to happen didn't happen. So if my mom didn't get out of bed by 11 o'clock, I get a text. But if, for example, the door to the house opens up after 10 p.m., I also get a text. It's very easily programmed.
Okay.
My mom has variability and, when she hits the kitchen. And so what I do is try to be a little bit flexible to that, knowing that there are probably some times where she should have already been in. And so I can just watch those general trends, Trish, over time and not really worry about the actual time of the day. Or I can use the app to give me very specific behaviors or routines occurring at certain times. So like Tim said, you kind of adapt the system the way you want to get the story and the notifications. So in your mind's eye that loved one of yours or that client of yours is just having a normal day. And that allows you then to go focus on other priorities, which is, whether it's your own self-care, your own work-life balance, or like what Kathy and Nathan were talking about, going and focusing on somebody that or maybe having more of a yellow or even a red day.
The one thing I would add to that is all the different features, the hub, the satellites, the tags, the pokes, that's a lot to throw at you all at once, but it really isn't that long of a list. and you really quickly develop a vocabulary of how you can apply it to someone's life. One of my best friends has Nomo for his mom, and once he understood what the system was, he was like, I know exactly what I'm doing with this for my mom, and I know exactly how I'm going to apply it, and it's simple.
So the tags are battery tags?
Correct. Tags are waterproof. They have a 10-year battery. They're guaranteed for 10 years, and then they've got a help button. It's about the size of a poker chip, so you can, and it's got a adhesive on the back, so you can stick it to anything that moves. It knows its orientation. It knows when it's been moved. Every time it gets a little jostle, it'll send a ping, and then we use how you set it, where you've assigned it, and what you're calling the tag to roll it up into a summary of the ADL activity.
And I'll just tell you really quickly, my best friend, when he put the Nomo in his mom's house, he and his brothers are Nomo fans. They put it on the refrigerator, they put it on the medicine cabinet, and they put one in the shower because they wanted to have the emergency alert button in the shower for her. What they found out was she was eating on time, she was taking her medicine on time, she wasn't showering. She was afraid of shower. So they were able to learn that unexpected piece of information and address it. Now her shower is like the Taj Mahal, and they watch her spending money on soap and shampoo.
Great questions.
Thanks for the question, Trish. Jess and Tim and Sean, thank you so much for the presentation. They have posted their information in the chat window. I'll make sure to send that out and follow up to this where we send out the recording. And really appreciate you guys taking the time today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you for having us.
We're going to stop the recording, and Patrick from Shift has some messaging about the training that's going on. So Patrick, you want to come on board?
Yeah, I'll try to be super quick here so we can finish up. Thank